Pretty nice day out here today. I think we're just gonna do a real quick agronomic update for you guys. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. It got a little cool out here last night. I think the forecast low was supposed to be about 35. The grass is still pretty dewy. I've got to imagine that there's some mud out in the fields yet from this heavy dew. So I'm gonna grab my mud boots and we'll take off and see what we see. Okay, so we're gonna walk onto our soybean field first. And you're gonna notice my pickup's back over here someplace. I'm not gonna get very far out here this morning, mostly because these plants are really tall. You can see they're about waist high on me. And it makes for tough walking, and I really don't want to run a lot of these down by walking clear out in the middle of the field. And I'm okay with that. This particular piece of ground is pretty consistent. There's not a lot of variability in the soil out here. There is, if you look behind me back over here, a low spot that usually doesn't yield quite as good as it does up here on top of this hill. But we're just gonna kind of focus our efforts up here at this point. We'll talk more about some of the other stuff when we get back to the farmyard. But while we're out here, I'm just gonna show you a video of the soybean plants themselves pretty quick. So again, you can see that these plants are really tall. I love that. That usually means that we've had plenty of internodal growth length, which means that these leaves and the areas on the stem where they set pods is quite a distance away from each other. If you have really short plants, a lot of times they will set pods right on the ground layer, basically right at the soil level there. And that makes it really, really hard for us to get the combine out here and do a really good job picking those beans that are right at the very bottom. So let's back up here a little bit and we'll see, hopefully it shows up all right. If you can see the undergrowth here, we have our first pods being set about 4 to 5 inches off the ground. And if you look at them, there's a ton of pods in there. They look nice and full. I'm anticipating these will be some larger soybeans than we've had in the last couple of years, just due to the fact that we've got adequate rainfall. When I was out here looking a couple weeks ago, I didn't see any 4-bean pods, but there's lots of 3s and a couple 2s on here. But what I'm talking about there is just, if you look at this particular soybean pod, you can see that there's 2 beans there. This one is just starting to come in. That probably won't quite fill out or mature before harvest season hits. But we've got a lot more pods that are like this, where we do have 3 fully grown soybeans in that pod. Today is September 8th, and this field looks pretty green yet. These are I don't recall right off the top of my head what maturity group they are. I believe it's 0.9. I will verify that before I get back to you guys. We do have some neighbors that are a couple miles to the north here that plant really, really early soybeans. Those fields are already starting to turn pretty good. But it's going to be a couple weeks before this one starts to change color really actively. So, but yeah, like I said, the soybeans I think look really, really good. We did have some late season issues with some soybean aphids. You can see a couple of them right here on this leaf, right here in the upper corner, right where my thumbs are at. We didn't reach the threshold level to spray, but I do know that we had some out here. It wasn't to the point, like I said, that we had to worry about coming out here and spraying for insects. And I think that's about all we need to look at for soybeans. I'm anticipating a good yield out of this particular crop again this year. I would like to say that it's going to be better than last year. It's really hard to say or estimate yield in soybeans, but I don't anticipate a crop failure whatsoever. So that's a good thing. Let's go take a look at our corn real quick, and then we'll take the drone out and do a flyover quick. And when we get done with all that, we'll go back to the farmyard, and I'll just give you some final thoughts on what I had going on for the rest of the summer here. Okay, so now we're out here in our cornfield. Obviously, with this corn being as tall as it is, I cannot show you very easily how far into the field I am, but I'm about the same distance into this field as I was for the soybeans. The western half of this farm which is where our corn's at this year, is typically much more consistent as far as yield is concerned than the eastern part of the field is even. And that's saying something, because like I was just telling you, the eastern part is very consistent as well. But let's take a look at some of the ears we got here. We'll just pull the silks off real quick out here in the field. And what I'd like you to notice is how far these kernels filled to the tip of the ear. Agronomically speaking, that's called tip back. And if you get kernels that are all the way to the tip of the ear like this, we might have left a little bit on the table for a yield because we could have maybe pushed the population a little bit more. This, like this particular instance or this particular ear, that looks about exactly what you want. You want about 1/4 to 1/2 inch worth of material that's left up here on the end that did not quite pollinate. That means we nailed population. This year we went to 32,000, and I'm pretty darn happy. If you look at all of these, they kind of average out to about where you want it to be. So I'm not disappointed in that. If you look at the leaves themselves, we do have these lower leaves that got tore up in that storm that I was telling you guys about back in June, early July. The new growth leaves up here at the top look really, really good. There are some discolorations in there that would have indicate to me that there was a very late season disease that came through here. We could have probably saved that with a fungicide application. However, this is not to the point where it's going to be devastating whatsoever. That's pretty minor in all reality. You get down in Iowa and Illinois, Indiana, some of those places where they have been getting rain, there's a lot of really, really very serious disease pressure that's come through. But these plants still look overall very, very healthy. This would be akin to having like a runny nose basically. So, but yeah, I'm gonna pick a couple ears. We'll go back to the farm and we'll discuss what we see in those ears. And then I will send you guys also a video of the drone, and I think that should be it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as it pertains to the soybean crop this year, we did, if you noticed in that video, we had a couple little spots where some water hemp broke out later in the season. That's because we just kept getting rains this year. There's really not much we can do about that. Actually, that's a good thing. Rain makes grain. Late season rains, especially in August like we've had, really helped to push pod fill when it comes to soybeans. We get a little bit bigger soybean, and generally that bodes to higher yields. But the inverse of that, the flip side of having adequate rainfall, is that so do the weeds. Every time it would rain, we got another flush of water hemp that would come through. The post-emerge application that we put on this year just did not have the extended coverage that we needed to keep some of those weeds under control. That's something that we'll have to look into for next year, assuming that we get another year that's similar to this one, where we do get ample seasonal rains. The last couple years where the spigots just shut off come July and especially into August, where we got basically no rain, we don't have the water hemp issues that we do for this year. No disease pressure in soybeans, not really that much insect pressure, especially when we were depending on that to be making yield. Like I was telling you, we did get some soybean aphids later in the growing season, not enough to the point where we had to worry about it. I know that there's been some guys that have been spraying fungicides, mostly in corn. Again, disease pressure in soybeans up in this part of the world was not really a huge factor, agronomically speaking, for this year. I really don't know of a good way to estimate yield in soybeans. We did talk about it at SDSU. The problem with soybeans is that there's so much variability on the actual bushels that we'll see. So we're not going to talk about that for right now. Corn looked really good all year, minus that one hailstorm that came through. It came through that very, very well. We didn't have any issues with that. We did go out and pick some ears when I was out in the field with you guys just a little bit ago. These are the two that I got. They are both 16 rows around. Corn will always be an even number of rows of kernels all the way around the ear. One of them was 36 kernels long and the other one was 37. When I was going to school at SDSU, they did have a mathematical formula that you could go through and plug those values into along with your population and estimate a yield. And that's an important word to note here, is that it's an estimate. But when I did that with these two particular ears, which were fairly indicative of what I saw out in the field, they come out to be about 209. Again, that's just an estimate. That doesn't mean that's what we're going to see. We have to wait for the combines to get out there and start rolling before we'll actually know what we have. But I will say this, based on what I've saw today, what I've seen throughout the growing season, I'm optimistic still for a yield that's above APH at least. How much above, we'll find out. If I'm wrong, we'll find that out too. But I think that we're sitting in a pretty good spot for this time of year. Hopefully we have enough heat to get the corn to finish out. It might be too far away for this to see, but we are in dent stage. When I was checking another ear, I saw that our milk line was about halfway through the kernel, so we're getting close to black layer, which we need to hit before we get a good killing frost. This morning was the coolest morning that we've had so far this year, with a low in the mid-30s. It's supposed to warm up again for the next week or so. That'll help us get us to the finish line when it comes to corn, and with soybeans as well. So we just have to hope that we get a seasonal frost. Typically that's going to come late this month, late September or early-ish October. And if we get to that point, we should be good. Thanks for watching.